I never expected that summer to be anything more than a relaxing escape, a chance to clear my mind, soak up the warmth of the sun, and breathe in the salty ocean air. The beach house had always been my sanctuary, a place where the waves whispered comfort and the golden sand stretched like an invitation to forget the worries of everyday life. But that year, something shifted, something I never saw coming. It all started when my friend, Claire, invited me to stay at her family's beachfront property for a few weeks. We had been close since college, and despite the years that had added lines around our eyes and wisdom in our laughter, our friendship remained untouched. Her husband, Greg, would be in and out for work, and her stepson, Nathan, was joining us for a bit before heading back to his own life. I had met Nathan before, though only in passing. The last time I saw him, he was just a gangly teenager with a mop of sandy brown hair and an easy grin. Now, at 24, he had grown into something else entirely, lean, broad-shouldered, and self-assured in a way that made people take notice. His presence was impossible to ignore, not because of arrogance, but because of something deeper, something steady and magnetic. Our first evening at the beach house, the four of us sat on the back deck, watching the sunset spill its colors across the sky. Nathan sat across from me, casually sipping a beer, his tanned arms resting on the chair's armrests, completely at ease. Claire was animated, as always, telling a story about one of her disastrous cooking attempts, and Greg chimed in with his usual dry humor. But every so often I caught Nathan's gaze flicker toward me, brief, unreadable glances that sent an unexpected heat through me. I told myself I was imagining things. A woman my age didn't attract the attention of a man in his prime, especially not her friend Stepson. And yet there was something in those glances, something that made my breath hitch and my skin prickle. The next morning, Claire and Greg left early to run errands, leaving me and Nathan alone in the house. I took my coffee onto the deck, enjoying the way the ocean breeze tangled through my hair, when I heard the sliding door behind me. "Morning." Nathan's voice was smooth, relaxed. I turned and found him standing there, barefoot and shirtless, a towel slung over his shoulder. His hair was damp, his skin glistening slightly from a morning swim. He looked like something out of a postcard, effortless and completely unaware of how striking he was. "Morning," I replied, forcing my voice to stay light. He leaned against the wooden railing, studying the ocean. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep," I admitted. "Something about being near the ocean makes my mind race." He nodded, thoughtful. "It's the sound. It never stops, never takes a break. Kind of like life." I smiled at that, surprised by the depth of his words. That's a good way to put it. We stood there in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the waves roll in and out. Then he turned to me with a slow, almost mischievous grin. "You ever go for a morning swim?" I laughed. "Not since I was a teenager." "Well, today's a good day to start." Before I could protest, he pulled off the towel, tossed it onto the railing, and jogged down toward the shore. The sun caught the lines of his back, the muscles moving effortlessly beneath his skin as he ran into the water. He dove under, disappearing for a few moments before surfacing with a shake of his head. "Come on, don't just watch," he called, grinning. Something about the moment, the playfulness in his voice, the way the morning light made everything seem golden, made me forget myself. Without overthinking, I kicked off my sandals and jogged down to the water's edge. The first rush of cold sent a shock through me, but as I waded deeper, the sensation melted into something exhilarating. Nathan swam beside me, his strokes effortless, his presence both easy and overwhelming. We stayed out there longer than I expected, talking between waves, laughing as the salt stung our eyes. When we finally walked back to shore, the sun had risen higher, warming our skin as the water dripped from us. As I reached for my towel, I felt Nathan's eyes on me again, not in a casual way, but in a way that made my pulse quicken. I turned to meet his gaze, and for the briefest moment, neither of us looked away. A slow, knowing smile curved his lips before he finally broke the silence. "I'm glad you came this summer." And with that, he turned and walked toward the house, leaving me standing there with my heart pounding, the waves lapping at my feet. That was the moment I knew. This summer was going to change everything. The rest of the morning passed in a blur, though my mind kept circling back to that moment on the beach. Nathan's lingering gaze, the way his voice carried something deeper than casual friendliness. I told myself it was nothing, just my imagination running wild. And yet, the feeling it left behind clung to me like salt on my skin. By the time Claire and Greg returned from their errands, I had managed to tuck the morning's events away, folding them neatly into the part of my mind where reckless thoughts went to be ignored. We spent the afternoon as planned, lounging under the shade of the patio umbrella, sipping cold drinks, and catching up on life. Nathan was there, but he played his part effortlessly, chatting with his stepfather about work, laughing at Claire's stories, acting as if nothing had shifted between us. Maybe for him, nothing had. I convinced myself of that, at least until the bonfire. That night we built a fire in the pit just a few steps from the deck, the kind of easy summer ritual that always made me nostalgic. The flames danced against the darkness, crackling as we sat in a circle with blankets draped over our shoulders, the air cooling with the arrival of the evening breeze. Claire had made a round of drinks, too strong, but that was part of the charm, and the conversation drifted lazily between past memories and lighthearted jokes. At some point, Greg excused himself, claiming the long drive earlier had worn him out. Claire followed not long after, leaving just Nathan and me by the fire, the warmth of the flames painting golden flickers across his face. I should have gone inside too. I told myself I would, any second now. But I stayed. Been a while since I had a night like this, Nathan mused, swirling the last of his drink in his glass. Quiet, simple. No deadlines or screens in my face. "You work too much?" I asked, shifting slightly in my chair. He huffed a laugh. "More than I should. I think I forget how to slow down sometimes." I nodded in understanding. I know the feeling. He looked over at me, his gaze steady. "Do you?" Something about the way he asked that made my stomach tighten. I wasn't sure how to respond, so I did what I always did when the air between me and a man got complicated. I deflected. "I have a hard time picturing you sitting at a desk all day. You seem more like." I hesitated, searching for the right words. "Like what?" I shrugged. "Like you should be out there, doing something adventurous. Something bigger than emails and spreadsheets." A slow smile played at the corner of his lips. "You sound like you know me." I swallowed, suddenly feeling like I'd revealed too much. Just an observation. His eyes stayed on me a beat too long, as if he was trying to decide something. Then he leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, his voice softer now. "You ever wonder what life would look like if we made different choices?" The question caught me off guard. "All the time," I admitted. He nodded, staring into the fire. "Sometimes I think about where I was 5 years ago, who I was, and it feels like someone else's life. It makes me wonder if I even knew what I wanted back then." I let out a breathy chuckle. "You're 24, Nathan. You're allowed to change your mind about what you want." He looked at me then, and something shifted in the air between us. What if I already know? The weight of his words settled between us, heavy and unspoken. I felt my pulse in my throat, my skin prickling under his gaze. My rational mind screamed at me to stand up, laugh it off, walk inside, but I didn't move. Instead, I held his stare, the flames flickering in his blue eyes, and for a moment neither of us said a word. A gust of wind sent a spray of embers floating into the night sky, and just like that, the spell broke. Nathan sat back, exhaling slowly, as if grounding himself. "We should probably head in," he said, his voice measured. "Careful now." Yes, I agreed, though neither of us made a move. Eventually, I stood first, pulling my blanket tighter around my shoulders, and without another word, I turned toward the house. I didn't look back, but I could feel him watching me as I walked away, feel the energy still buzzing between us. Inside, I pressed my hands against the cool marble of the kitchen counter, exhaling a shaky breath. This was dangerous. Whatever this was, it couldn't happen. And yet, for the first time in years, I felt more alive than I had in a long, long time. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Nathan's face in the firelight, the intensity in his gaze, the way his voice dipped just enough to make me wonder if I was imagining things. I told myself it didn't matter, that nothing had actually happened. But the way my body hummed with restless energy said otherwise. By morning, I had convinced myself that distance was the best solution. It was just a brief moment of misinterpretation, a fleeting tension stirred by nostalgia and the warmth of summer air. It didn't need to mean anything. At least that's what I kept repeating as I stood in the kitchen pouring myself a cup of coffee, trying not to think about whether Nathan was still asleep just down the hall. I didn't have to wonder for long. Morning. His voice was soft, just a little hoarse with sleep, and when I turned, I found him leaning against the doorway, barefoot, his hair slightly tousled. He wore a plain white t-shirt and loose drawstring shorts, looking effortless, like he belonged here, like the easy rhythm of the house had already settled into his skin. I swallowed against the sudden dryness in my throat. Morning. I managed, focusing on the coffee as if it required deep concentration. Nathan padded across the kitchen, moving with the quiet confidence of someone completely at ease, and reached into the cabinet for a mug. "Sleep okay?" he asked casually. I took a sip of coffee, hoping the warmth would settle something in me. "Yeah. You?" He let out a low chuckle. "Not really." I looked up at him then, and for a brief second, I thought he was going to say something more. But before he could, Claire entered the kitchen, still in her robe, yawning as she reached for the coffee pot. "Well, you two are up early," she said, rubbing her eyes. I forced a smile, grateful for the interruption. Habit, I guess. Nathan didn't say anything. The morning passed in an easy blur. Breakfast on the deck, another lazy round of sunbathing. I kept my distance, busying myself with Claire, helping her prepare lunch, avoiding the moments when Nathan's eyes found mine. But the tension from the night before hadn't dissipated. If anything, it had thickened, like the air before a summer storm. By early afternoon, the heat had become almost unbearable. "Let's go for a swim," Claire announced, standing and stretching. I hesitated. I hadn't planned on getting in the water, but I also knew turning it down would seem odd. The ocean was exactly as I remembered it, cool, endless, pulling at me in gentle waves. I waded in, the salty water lapping at my skin, the sun a bright halo overhead. Claire and Greg stayed closer to shore, chatting, but Nathan swam out farther, diving beneath the surface before emerging again, shaking water from his hair. For a while, I let myself relax, let the water wash away the thoughts I wasn't ready to face. But when I turned, Nathan was closer than I expected, treading water just a few feet away. "Feel better?" he asked. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. I needed this. He studied me for a moment, and then, almost imperceptibly, his lips quirked into a smirk. "You're avoiding me." My breath hitched, but I forced a laugh. Tum flattered herself. Nathan tilted his head slightly, as if considering whether to push further. Then he took a slow breath and let it out. "Okay." He didn't press me, and for some reason that made it worse. We floated in silence for a few moments, the water gently moving around us. The shore felt miles away, and for the first time, I let myself really look at him, at the way the droplets clung to his skin, at the quiet intensity in his eyes. "This is crazy," I murmured before I could stop myself. Nathan's expression didn't change. "Is it?" I swallowed, suddenly feeling like the waves weren't the only thing pulling me under. "Yes." He held my gaze for a long moment, then exhaled, a small, knowing smile playing at his lips. "If you say so." And then, just like that, he turned and swam back toward the shore. I stayed in the water a while longer, my heart pounding, knowing, despite everything, I wasn't ready to follow him back just yet. That evening, the air was different. Maybe it was just me, carrying the weight of something unspoken, or maybe it was the way Nathan carried himself, calm, patient, as if he knew something inevitable was coming. Either way, the tension between us had settled into something steady, like an undercurrent pulling just beneath the surface. After dinner, Claire and Greg turned in early, leaving the house quiet except for the faint sound of waves crashing in the distance. I stood on the back deck, watching the last sliver of the sun dip below the horizon, the sky burning in deep shades of orange and purple. The breeze was warm, the scent of salt thick in the air. I should have gone to bed. I should have left the moment I heard the soft sound of footsteps behind me. But I didn't. Nathan stepped onto the deck, his presence steady, unhurried. For a long moment, he didn't say anything, just stood there beside me, watching the ocean. "You're quiet tonight," he finally said. I exhaled a small, breathy laugh. I had a lot on my mind. He nodded, as if he already knew. "You want to talk about it?" I turned to him then, really looking at him, at the easy confidence in his posture, the way he leaned against the railing with his hands resting loosely on the wood. The moonlight cast soft shadows on his face, making him look even younger, and yet not. "There's nothing to talk about," I said, but even as the words left my mouth, we both knew they weren't true. Nathan studied me for a long moment, then shook his head with a quiet chuckle. "What?" I asked. "You," he said simply. "You keep pretending like this isn't real." I swallowed hard. "Nathan." "I'm not asking for anything," he said, his voice soft but firm. "I just want you to admit that you feel it too." The truth sat on my tongue, heavy, waiting. I looked away, out toward the dark horizon. "Doesn't change anything." "Doesn't it?" I closed my eyes briefly, willing myself to hold on to the logic I'd been clinging to all weekend. But when I opened them, Nathan was closer. Not touching, not pushing, just waiting. A long silence stretched between us, filled only by the sound of waves rolling in and the distant chirp of crickets. Then softly, Nathan said, "You don't have to be afraid." I let out a shaky breath, my hands gripping the railing like it was the only thing keeping me grounded. "I don't even know what this is," I admitted. Nathan took a step closer,